Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Attention Retention. I'm Jackie McManus, CEO and founder of KJ Media. We are a recruitment advertising agency specializing in talent attraction, optimizing your hiring processes, and driving efficiency to help grow your workforce in the trucking industry. And on this show, we dive into the world of recruitment, retention, and recognition by interviewing industry leaders and experts as we unpack the strategies, challenges, and successes surrounding these three critical aspects of workforce management. And this week, I am so excited to be joined by Emory Mills, Vice President for FTC Transportation. Emory, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Emory, we were just chatting about this, but you're celebrating almost 25 years with FTC coming this January, which just speaks volumes to the company's success and culture. And as a longtime Best Fleets to Drive For and member of the Hall of Fame, FTC has found the right way to succeed by fostering efficiency, lucidity, feedback, and appreciation for their workforce. Even though FTC is a small fleet, it definitely achieves really, really big results. So before we dive into the 3 R's, could you walk us through your journey to becoming the Vice President for FTC Transportation?
Sure. So I joined the team back in 2000, January of 2000, and it was a little bit different operation back then, but pretty much the same mission has carried us through. We're the core carrier for Feed the Children. We are here to serve their mission, helping those in need. So that has carried through all of these years. I got introduced into the safety department pretty quickly and moved through learning everything that I could about safety and transportation. I had been with other transportation companies before FTC, but this one is definitely where I've been the longest. And over the past 24 years, I have worked closely with our drivers and with our operations team to make sure that we are the safest out there that we can be. And then about a year ago, I was offered the ability to be promoted to vice president. So I jumped at that because it's an amazing organization. It's a second home to me to be at FTC. So I believe in everything that we do here and everything we do for Feed the Children.
Well, that's fantastic. That's it's not a small amount of time to be with a company, and it's rarely seen in today's market. So, like I said, FTC is definitely doing something right when it comes to culture. So let's dive right into recruitment. Start with really the first R. Over your career, what have you found to be the more successful and effective ways to attracting drivers in today's competitive market?
Well, when I first started, obviously we were still doing a lot of print advertising back then. There was, newspapers, people were looking at the classifieds. It has definitely evolved since then. We're a small company. We've only got 25 trucks. We don't maintain a recruiting budget typically. Most of our recruiting comes through word of mouth. People hear about us. They hear about Feed the Children. They refer to the Best Fleets to Drive For list, and they look at those carriers that are making that list every year. And they're reaching out to those companies and researching those companies. With the power of the internet, drivers are able to really find the best fit for them. And so we found that was a great jumping off place, is just all of the social media and the online information around Best Fleets to Drive For draws a lot of attention for us. But definitely word of mouth too. Our drivers talk to other drivers, to their friends, to their families. And a lot of times we hear that someone that has come to us because they heard about us through someone else or through Feed the Children.
That's the best type of recruit method to attract drivers in any company, whether it's 25 drivers to 1,000 drivers. If you have a strong referral and network program, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Drivers want to hear from other drivers, and I know that on the advertising side, right? We can make companies have really attractive ads and But when it comes down to it, most drivers, about 30%, typically come for fleets that are that 500 truck plus. And you mentioned, the power of the internet, the World Wide Web. It's really evolved. Drivers in today's world are not just quickly applying; they're researching. They're taking their time before, especially drivers that are professional and take their jobs. Not that all drivers don't take their job seriously, but are really professional about who they choose as a employer. Really take that time to figure out who's the best fit for them. And, with recruiters as a whole right now facing so many hurdles in the industry, finding qualified candidates to maintaining a strong pipeline, in your opinion, what are more of the significant challenges recruiters face in the current market?
Um, well, I would say probably the biggest thing that I hear, a recruiter is working on the front end. They're not in the operations side of trucking. And I'm speaking to the bigger carriers out there. That doesn't necessarily apply as much to us because the person doing our recruiting is doing a lot of things here. But a lot of times that person, because they're not in operations, they don't have maybe a solid feel for the information that they give out. So they're not trying to be dishonest, they're not trying to be misleading, but they may be making some promises that the operations side cannot live up to. And that goes a long way towards reputation among truck drivers, and they talk to each other and they share that information. So if they got recruited to a company and they were made big promises and they got there and within 2 weeks nothing is panning out, they're not just leaving, but they're telling all of their friends that this is not an ideal company. So it's an uphill battle for those companies when their recruiters do not have a firm grasp of the operation and how the operation works and what is truly doable.
I think that's a really, really strong point that sometimes goes overlooked because the industry faces high turnover, and we'll talk more about that in detail. But when we work with clients, we find the folks that have the higher turnover is because the recruiter and operations just not streamlined, and maybe it's just a matter of a weekly meeting or getting updates from both teams so they're not so siloed separately, but they're really working together so that in turn the recruiter can have that conversation with the driver. And it's okay if a driver is not the right fit. It's okay to say, you seem like you're a great candidate, it just doesn't seem like this type of driving job is for you. And the honesty, I find, is typically the best policy.
Well, the emphasis shouldn't be placed on how many drivers we hire, but it should be on the retention side of it. How many drivers are we keeping? If you've hired 10 drivers, how many of those 10 are still there 6 months later, a year later? That's where the focus needs to be. So those recruiters need to be working hand in hand with those that are doing the retaining. And a lot of times, both when I was in safety and recruiting and now our new safety and recruiting person, I encourage her to do the same thing. And that is to walk over to dispatch and ask them, is this doable? This person lives in this area. Is this a good location to work out of? Can they be home every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it may be that they're requesting? Whatever the special request is, because every driver has different needs. We're all individuals. Everybody has different needs, whether it's more miles, more home time, more personalized attention, whatever it is. And so we need to know that we're able to fulfill that need. So we work really closely with our operations side to make sure that we can meet that need before an offer is extended to a driver, because we do want to make sure it's a good fit. It's an investment when we bring somebody here, and we don't want to disappoint them. We don't want to let them down.
And that's something that often it again goes all overlooked is and I know when clients come to us and say, okay, we have 50 job openings, or even we have 5, how much money do we need to spend? First of all, let's look at why we're losing so many drivers, because cost of advertising just it's going up, and there's not much a lot of we can optimize and do that. But if the company can assess, okay, driver comes and majority are leaving on day 39, bridge that, because the opportunity costs are really high. It's not just the P&L and that one media spend for the recruitment advertising agencies. It's how long can you keep these drivers? And that's something that comes from within a company. So, you know, I love that your team, even at your scale, makes that point to talk to dispatch, talk to operations about exactly this is the driver we're speaking to, this is what their needs are. If you think about it, Emory, I always think of it this way. I mean, when we look at advertising or hiring on in office staff, we're going to make sure it's a good culture fit too. And the same
Absolutely.
should be for drivers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They may not be somebody that you're working alongside of day to day in a very personal, real, in the office setting, but you are working with them every single day. You need to be able to rely on them. You're handing them keys to over $1 million worth of equipment and cargo. And it needs to be somebody that you can trust, but they can trust you too.
Hmm.
And, the trust, the honesty, those are just the cornerstones of not just the recruiting, but the retention and the operations side of things.
Yeah, yeah. I think retention is more important in so many factors than recruitment, and keeping drivers engaged and committed over the long term
Absolutely.
it requires strategy. It requires leadership to sit down and evaluate what's working, what's not working. Again, day 39, we're having this mass exodus. Why? Even if just one or two drivers over a 2-year span, there's maybe some ways to make adjustments. And I'm curious, with your experience, what have you found, within the first 90 days, first year, any methods that have been successful in retaining your workforce over time?
Um, the biggest thing, I mean, I know communication is one of those words that gets thrown out a lot. People say we have an open door policy, we have communication, we improve communication skills. It goes so far beyond that. Having an open door policy means that that person's willing to walk through your door and sit down and ask you a question. And a lot of times they feel a barrier, they feel like they can't do that. So it's really meeting them where they're at. If it's walking out on the yard and they're, putting some stuff in their personal vehicle to go on home time, to go out there and see if they need anything, see if everything's going well with them, and there is not a member of our staff that won't do that and doesn't do that on a regular basis. It's making that personal connection. We get really it's really easy to fall into texting and messaging and all of those types of things and lose that human connection. But with drivers, especially if they don't have families at home or somebody they communicate with regularly, we are that person for them. So if we're just sending them a text, if all they ever hear from is some sort of digital device, an electronic device, and they're not having that human connection, it's really easy to forget who you work for and who you work with. And it's really just about those personal connections, making those points of communication important. They're just so important. So to just figure out how to meet them where they are and what those needs are, to realize that they're having a bad day. You see them walk through the office and they're slumped over or they seem agitated, just taking that time out, or you hear their voice on the phone, taking that time out to try to gauge what's going on and try to help them. And we encourage them, don't wait until you're ready to boil over to say something's wrong. Tell us at the first moment something's wrong. We want to hear about it. We want to see if we can fix it. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes we can't fix it. Sometimes it is just part of trucking and part of logistics, and it's something we can't overcome. But 90% of the time, it's something that we can fix.
You know, just the act of listening to drivers and maybe opening up the floor and making them feel as if, open door policy, you're right, it gets swinged around left and right. And we have a database of 250,000 drivers, and so we survey them often, and we want to know, why they applied to a company, what's keeping them at a certain company. And it's really interesting at Emory. Over the years, it's shifted. And benefits are always going to be a big, right. But if you go to Indeed, for example, and you look at each job, it fluxes maybe by a couple dollars here and there, with, OTR versus local. We know the benefits of that, but two OTR positions or regional, the pay is not significantly different. We're not talking thousands of dollars. And when we surveyed these drivers, was interesting. They want to be a name and not a number. And I know that's a phrase again that gets turned around, like thrown around quite often, but they want to know that they have a team that has their back And not everyone should get an award, right? But not everyone, but they know that if they have a concern, they have someone to talk to about it. Whether or not there's anything you can really do about it, because we're in trucking and logistics and we know all the ins and outs and challenges with that. But many of these drivers face significant challenges just on their day to day with how civilians treat drivers, right? I mean, they get cut off, they get flipped off, they get blindsided. And so if trucking companies can add that type of open communication and make them feel comfortable and bring some positivity to their life, because like I said, if you're not in trucking, I know a couple of friends, until I told them, they weren't too great to drivers on I-95, for example, right? But so there's these outside elements we can't control. So if you can control your controllables, right, and be able to at least open up that dialogue outside of just texting and chatbots and that human connection, I think that's a novelty that is going to help companies really win in driver role recruitment and then retention.
Well, and you touched on something, burnout among drivers, truck drivers, over the road truck drivers specifically, is a very real obstacle. So, and we have drivers come in periodically and they've had their fill. And, we encourage drivers to go home every 2 to 3 weeks. We have drivers that prefer to stay out longer at a time. They want to stay out 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or longer. And we're flexible, we'll do what they want, and that's fine. But we also are very aware of the burnout. And so being on the road that long and dealing with some of the insanity that goes on the roadways, people texting while driving, people being disrespectful to truck drivers, treating them like they are nothing. That is just not, it's a hostile workplace for them out there on the road.
That's
And it,
very
it does
describe it.
it does push burnout really at a very quick, high intense speed for them. And so, really gauging that they need some time off, they need to take a vacation. Maybe we need to, get them in a different area of the US where they're traveling, for a week or so. Maybe they've been in the Northeast too much, not to pick on you in the Northeast, but maybe they've been in the Northeast battling the traffic and the things there, the limited parking and the issues there. Maybe they've been battling that too much lately and they need to go west a little bit. So it's really, in our dispatch department here, our operations department, they are amazing at gauging that, saying, you know what, this guy has been out here. He's done a lot of feed the children loads for us out on the East Coast, but we're going to try to run him west. He needs to get off the East Coast. He's, or whatever that is, whatever that looks like. We also encourage riders. We have a rider program where they can have a rider with them. They can have a dog with them. So anything that helps them to have a companion, to have somebody to talk to, somebody to keep them company, somebody they're even responsible for out on the truck besides themselves, it just kind of helps to keep them grounded when they're out on the road and to help fight off that burnout a little bit.
Yeah, and if you think about it, just I know for me, I travel quite a bit for visiting clients and going to trade shows and conferences. I know after a couple of days, I you know just spent, and it's not nearly what drivers are dealing with. So the burnout, and I never thought of it that way. It's like kind of a hostile environment for the drivers 90% of the time. That's an interesting way to approach it, but that's accurate.
It's very accurate. It's sad. It's the sad truth of it. I have about I have a little less than an hour commute to and from work, and there are days that's definitely more than enough. Just the one way direction, and so I always pause and think about our guys and our men and women out there that are battling those same things, but they're doing it in a much larger vehicle. And people, I watch all the time people and how they treat drivers out on the road around us, and it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. You want to you want to pull them over and teach them how to be more courteous to truck drivers, because they have such a trying job. They do such an amazing job, and they are so committed to safety. They don't want anybody hurt out there. And I couldn't be more proud of our people, but I know every trucking company feels that way. They are true safety professionals out there.
I think that's one thing you said. I've always said in my later years in life, I like essentially work with the Department of Motor Vehicles and put in a section around how to be courteous to drivers because one thing that that I guess shined light in a positive way to our industry was COVID. And that was one of the first times that drivers were actually talked about in a really positive way. Lester Holt, CNN, Fox News, whatever you're listening to, talked about drivers and how essential they are in our workforce. And I was, obviously terrible global pandemic, but it was nice to hear the general public outside of our industry, right, acknowledge the driver. And I'd love to see more of that in the brand image of the driver and really enhance that because, drivers, let's say 30 years ago, it was like a badge of honor to be a professional driver, where the stigma has significantly, you know, reduced in a negative way. And if you think about it, we're gonna always need drivers. I know there's autonomous trucks, but in our lifetime, at least yours and mine, Emory, there's gonna be a driver that we're gonna need, and we always,
Always.
right? So how do we as an industry, shape that? So first of all, we keep drivers in our industry because our biggest competition may be an ABC trucking company down the street, but it's other industries. That's where they're going.
Well, and I think I have a couple of trains of thought going with that. One of them is, I have 5 kids, and all but one of them are beyond driving age. They're all driving except for the youngest. And one of the things in teaching them to drive, and even just them riding in the car as kids, my 11-year-old knows this, is how to drive around a truck, being respectful of truck drivers, and understanding the space around trucks. And that's something that I emphasized with all my children, but not just them. Every time they had friends in the car, every time we went anywhere, my nieces, my nephews, my whoever it may be, I would hear somebody say, "Oh, this truck," and I would take that opportunity to say, "No, you need to understand what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing, and they are being safe. It's you that needs to behave more safely." So me personally, being in the trucking industry, obviously that gives me that insight to take that opportunity every chance I get. I think putting programs into driving school programs, whether it's in the high schools or the driver's ed programs, I think making sure that they understand not just the no zones, but about courteous driving, not just with 18 wheelers, but with other vehicles. But courteous driving, what's respectful? Just be respectful because you're going to avoid an accident or a road rage incident. The other thing I would say is, and we've been a part of TCA's Highway Angel program that recognizes drivers. Excellent program, but we need more of those types of things that talks about drivers out there, the things that they do, the good that they do, just every single day. I mean, these are men and women that, especially with over the road drivers, they're away from their homes, they're away from their families, they're missing, little league games, they're missing, concerts, the things that we all take for granted that we all we're there for our kids. It's this work life balance that they don't have the opportunity to have like most of us do. And they've made a sacrifice to be out on the road and to do the good that they do. And obviously, with us, we work with Feed the Children, so it's a different kind of good. But the driver with any company, truck, ABC company, whoever it is, they're delivering goods and services that we all need, we all rely on. So they are all heroes. They are all doing that job and making sacrifices to do that for all of us. And so, whatever we can do to keep that out in the public eye, like it was in COVID, I would support 1,000%. And I know our entire team would.
Yeah. In a way, humanizing them. You actually just inspired me during COVID. Fifth Wheel Hub is our driver community there, and we essentially partnered with drivers and made little plaques for social media and say, "Hi, I'm John Smith. I'm a father. I'm a Little League coach. I haul America's cheese. I'm a professional truck driver. And we made these, and the results were incredible. And the amount of drivers that wanted to be engaged in it, and it kind of fell in the back burner. But I feel like another program like that is needed at a mass level, because with social media and technology these days, you can whip that out pretty quickly and it can get a big reach. And that's really what it comes down to, is educating the public.
Well, and again, starting young too. We did something last year that we had not done in previous years. Driver Appreciation Week is coming up really quickly, and so in the past we've done. We always do gift bags for our drivers. We've done thank you notes from Feed the Children employees, from FTC employees. And we've engaged their families to send notes from home, and we put those in their gift bags. Last year, we took an additional step. My daughter was in fifth grade last year, and I reached out to her language arts teacher, her English teacher, and said, this is what we're doing. We're doing Truck Driver Appreciation Week. This is what it's about. I sent her a link to tell her what it was about. And I asked if they would be interested in writing maybe a thank you note to the drivers.
I love that.
So last year, the fifth grade class at my daughter's school, and they've already agreed again to do it this year. She asked me to do it every year. So even though my daughter's not there anymore, but she had all of her classes write thank you notes. It was a writing project for them, but they also drew pictures, whether it was trucks or flowers or whatever. Most of them drew trucks, and they sent those up here to the office, and we distribute those to the drivers. And it did two things, I think. I mean, besides warmed all of our hearts, the drivers were very emotional about it. Some of our biggest, burliest guys had tears in their eyes when they read the notes and saw the pictures. One told us the other day that he still has his from last year on his refrigerator, that he loves it that much. But it also gave this opportunity to talk to fifth graders. And yes, they're not driving age, but they ride in cars, they're with their families. But it gave them this opportunity to learn a little bit about what truck drivers do and why we should show appreciation for them. And, Touch a Truck is another event that we're involved in coming up again next month. September's a busy month, but the kids come out and they see, the police cars and the fire trucks and all that, but they come out and see our trucks and they are so excited about it, and they get in them and they ask why there's a bed in the truck. And so we get to tell them why there's a bed in the truck, that this driver doesn't go home every night. And we explain what we do and about Feed the Children's mission. But it is such a great outreach to the kids and the youth that they get to see a truck hands on. They get to see how big it is. They get a better understanding of what it is. And they get to meet those drivers and understand that those are real human beings. Those are somebody's dads, their moms, aunts and uncles. And so they're getting a really good feel for that those people are not just some robot in a truck driving it down the road and getting in my way and slowing me down, but it's a real human being behind the wheel. So
Starting when they're young, that I absolutely love that program. First of all, the teacher obviously loves it. It's a great project. Secondly, it falls in line with curriculum. And then, most importantly, educates them on the industry, and it's a win-win across the board. I would love to see more of that, and because it does start when you're young. Those are really informative years. And I know I'm a girl from Long Island, New York. I grew up, you know, 20 miles from New York City. I wasn't taught anything about trucking whatsoever. I just happened to work for a truck driver staffing agency at 2008 because nobody else would hire me, and then I fell in love with the industry. So even if it gets the message out there about our industry, and I think that's what's always kept me in the industry, is that the folks here are just down to earth, really good people. And it's how do we get more folks in, whether they're a driver or they're a vice president. I know with our clients, I'd say a good 40% of them, VPs and above, they started their career as a driver. They have incredible programs because they were a driver, not, didn't go to college and get into $200,000 worth of debt or whatever college is these days. If it's all 4 years, hands-on experience, drove for a couple years, moved into recruiting, then dispatch, and then started climbing the ladders. And now executives at these companies. So the opportunities within our industry are are incredible, and they're there. And it's just, how do we get more folks in?
Right, right. Because a lot of times people, I know around here, a lot of times people go into trucking jobs because that's what's available. That's kind of what happened with me. I wasn't looking for a job in trucking, but I kind of fell into trucking, and it's stuck. I've been here ever since. And it is an incredible opportunity to touch a lot of lives and a lot of people. So,
Yeah. Let's talk now about recognition. In essence, driver appreciation is a couple weeks away,
right.
and it's a key element, as we all know, in the workplace. But it's challenging in industries like ours, where the drivers are often on the road and away from the main office. So, would love to know about, how you go about, besides for what we just spoke about, recognizing your drivers and some best practices that your team utilizes.
We kind of have several different things. We have annual fleet safety awards with a
Mhm.
big banquet, and we invite all those award winners and their families to come to the banquet. Members of our board are there. Some of the executive leadership from Feed the Children is there. But we all gather in a room to celebrate their achievements, their safety achievements, their leadership, things that they've done throughout the year. It goes beyond handing somebody an award, taking their picture, handing them a check, any of those things. Just really them standing in front of people and having, people applaud for them and cheer them on. Um, it goes a long ways, and people get excited about the awards banquet. We meet monthly for safety committee meetings. We're actually in the process of putting together some individual councils to further advise. So we have a driver committee right now that meets quarterly, but
Okay.
we're actually working to put together some councils to address certain needs, whether it's technology or operations or just employee engagement, just so that we have more input from them on how better to do things in areas that they see. But we also have, of course, some of the same things that other companies do. We recognize on an individual basis gift cards for, safety achievements, things that they do throughout the year. They get a clean inspection. They do something great. We have quarterly bonuses, and part of that we have a kudos points built into that scorecard. So we
Okay.
give them kudos points. So if we got a compliment, a brag on them throughout the quarter, we track those all quarter long, and that gives them bonus points that goes into a cash bonus every quarter. Just for doing, they always say, I'm just doing my job, but they're doing their job and then some, which is what they all do every single day here. Um,
Hmm.
so, Driver Appreciation Week, obviously, they're out on the road as they come through, and for weeks after Driver Appreciation Week, we route them through and we give them their gift bags full of goodies. We do drawings every single day during Driver Appreciation Week for additional prizes, gift cards, things like that. Um, Engaging their families where we can. We have a Facebook group set up for the friends and families of our team members so that they can keep up with pictures and events and things that are going on, new employees, retirements, anything that's going on, they can be in the know too, but and stay connected to their family member that's out on the road. And of course, again, we encourage the riders. We encourage them to bring a dog. That's such a special element. But anything that we can do to recognize them throughout the year, we take that opportunity. So we like to nominate for Oklahoma does the OTA here does uh, professional driver awards every year.
Hmm.
And so we look at our drivers throughout the year and nominate them based on safety records, on their years of service with us, and anything else that may have accomplished throughout the year. We nominate those drivers, and they can go on to potentially run, or it's not running for it, to be nominated or chosen as the ATA Driver of the Year from that program. And so we actually had one of our drivers chosen a few years ago to be Driver of the Year. So that was the first time we'd had that happen. And again, we only have 25 drivers. So to have one of our drivers chosen as the National Driver of the Year was amazing. Um, but we've won, national safety awards, and that's, anytime we get recognition for the company, we want to pass that on to our drivers too, through whatever it may be. A gift item, a gift card, a special lunch, whatever that is, because they're the driving force behind that. They are who makes that happen for us. We have an amazing team here in the terminal, and I don't want to discredit anything that they do. They do such an amazing job day in and day out. And obviously, those on the road, they make some special sacrifices.
Mm-hmm. What I thought was interesting, reviewing your website and actually seeing the safety professional awards, it goes back to 2011. I've looked at quite a bit of trucking websites out there, and you don't really see that. That's really rare. I thought that was so special that drivers from 2011, 2013, you name it, they're on the website still.
They're still on the website, and I actually one of my hats that I wear here is I manage our website. Um, and so part of the reason for that is, drivers retire from here. My hope, and I expressed this especially when I moved in the vice president position, but it's something I've always said, whether they hire on as a driver, an office staff, a shop staff, my hope for everybody is that they retire from here. I started here in my mid 20s. I am going to be turning 50 this weekend. And
Early birthday
thank
to
you.
you. The big thing.
But with that in mind, obviously retirement's a little bit closer now. But when I started in my 20s, I very early on said, this is where I want to retire from. And everyone at that time thought I was crazy.
Really?
That was just unheard of. Nobody stays at a company that long. And, one of our mechanics has been here over 30 years. It is the culture here. And so my goal for everyone that comes through the doors is that they stay here till retirement, and that we're the kind of company that they want to be with and stay with till retirement. So a lot of the pictures on the website, the safety professionals that are listed out there, some of the million milers, they've now retired. They've moved on to other things, but their pictures remain out there. They're part of our history and our legacy. They've left a legacy here, and we want to continue to honor that.
I think that's very special and extremely unique in our space, even with the world of digital advertising and websites. I was just so ecstatic to see that, and I hope some trucking companies take some of those lessons out of your playbook and implement it, because it makes a difference regardless of where the driver's career is now. And 2011 is quite some time ago, so I think it's a really special program that you guys have, and really hone in on honoring and celebrating your drivers, of course, during Driver Appreciation Week, but all the time, right? Now, as we start to wrap up, Emory, I'd love to ask, with your experience, especially at FTC and the prior to, what would you say is one of the more important lessons that you've learned in your career, particularly around the context of recruitment, retention, and recognition?
Probably one of the things you said at the very beginning, it's listening. Just sitting and being quiet long enough to really listen, so that you can figure out what the need really is. And that starts in recruiting. That starts when they're sitting across from you or you're on an interview call. Ask the question and then stop and really listen to the answer. Don't be looking at the next question on the list. Really listen, because you're going to get a really good feel for who that person is, what they're really looking for, what their needs are, and know if it is a fit early on. But then that continues on throughout their tenure here. You want to really listen and know what the problems are. And after you're done listening and you've made those notes based on what they've said, then the follow through, the follow up. You can't, like I said earlier, you cannot say yes to everything. It's virtually impossible. We just can't do it. But sometimes there's a happy medium. And even if you have to say no, go back to them and tell them, I have to say no, but this is why I have to say no, and explain it. And everybody that I know, everybody here on our team is reasonable and they understand the whys, and we can go through that with them. They don't question that. They understand the whys. If we say no, they understand. Or if we say not right now, we can do it, but we can't do it right now, then that's a perfectly acceptable answer. We'll do everything in our power, but we can't do it right now. So But listening and then just really following through and making sure that they know that they've been heard. That's just so important to everybody. And that doesn't matter if they are behind the wheel, behind a computer, or under a truck. That doesn't matter. So,
When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, 99.9% of people want to do the right thing. They want to be good. They want to have relationships within their business, within families, within their community. And so as trucking companies grow their fleet or even maintain their fleet, having that open-ended communication, listening, and the bottom line, people want to feel valued, heard, and respected. And so it's taking those and kind of streamlining it to your trucking company. So I absolutely love the work that you guys are doing there at FTC. And for our drivers that are following us, they love listening to the podcast. And if you could share why drivers should consider a career at FTC, that would be great. There's going to be a link in the show notes below to their website and career page. So Emory, I'd love to hear from you.
sure. Really working for FTC Transportation, it's more than just another driving job. Every member of our team helps to make a difference every day. 7.3 million children in the US live in households that experience food insecurity. And Feed the Children believes that no child should go to bed hungry. So we're in business to help Feed the Children, serve those children and those families. And so, again, it's just more than another truck driving job.
You heard it from Emory herself. Emory, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I've been excited to have you on and talk more in detail. I feel like I could talk to you for another 17 hours. Just a wealth of information and really know how to treat people right.
Thank you, Jackie. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so that concludes another episode of Attention Retention. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Remember, the road to success begins with effective recruitment, thoughtful retention, and genuine recognition. Feel free to share this knowledge with your peers, industry colleagues. Your sharing can make a difference, and together we can empower the industry to thrive. Until next time.